The Fallout series is not only one of the biggest franchises out there right now, but also one of the most mysterious. And while that mystery comes from all over the place, including the vaults and their heinous backstories, the questions of who really dropped the bombs and the theories around the war, to whether or not the teddy bears from Fallout 4 are actually watching us the entire time, out of every mystery in Fallout, one of the best is a specific place we get to visit in the third game, that not only has connections to many other Fallout titles, but also is home to some of the biggest secrets the series has to offer, the Dunwich Building. Located in the southwestern corner of the Fallout 3 map, west of the infamous Tenpenny Tower, the Dunwich Building at a glance is nothing special. It's your run-of-the-mill abandoned office building in the wasteland with shattered windows and a burned-out roofing unit. But the closer you look inside this disheveled structure, the crazier things get. On the first floor when you walk in, it becomes clear that the entire building has been decimated, and in the rubble now lies a host of feral ghouls that will attack you on sight, along with an assortment of different audio logs and journal entries that detail the life of different survivors that have tried to call this place home. The more you listen to these recordings though, the clearer it becomes that a lot more than meets the eye is happening in this building. Previous inhabitants like Jamie can be heard slowly descending into madness, whispering in tongues and seemingly giving themselves over to some sort of higher power, a power we have yet to see or hear about. And as you traverse this ruined building more and more, a broken set of passageways can be discovered that lead deeper beneath the building, full of more audio logs and environmental storytelling, which all culminates in one horrifying discovery. Deep underground beneath the Dunwich Building lies what is known as the Underchambers, a small chasm littered with feral ghouls, all surrounding an obelisk in the center, which sings a soothing hum while spewing out an unbelievable amount of toxic radiation. One of the ghouls in the middle is none other than Jamie, who you heard on those lost audio logs, and if provoked, he will start to somehow order the feral ghouls to attack, resulting in an all-out brawl and utter carnage. Somehow, the ghouls in this building were not only being controlled, but were apparently praying to this obelisk, gathered around it like monks when we first find them, and considering that feral ghouls are supposed to be mindless killing machines, this discovery is quite unique. However, even more horrifying, if you turn up your in-game ambient sound volume high enough, the echoes of an eerie voice can be heard, beckoning the player to surrender themselves to find salvation. Something obviously nefarious is going on in the Dunwich Building, but as to what that is, we still don't exactly know. If you search through the terminal entries in-game and across newer Fallout titles, it can be deduced that the Dunwich Building is actually an office of operations for a group known as the Dunwich Borers, a company that manufactures rock drills for large tunneling operations. In Fallout 4, we even get a glimpse into one of these massive operations firsthand, which includes strange hallucinations and voices very similar to the kind we encounter in the Dunwich Building as well. Theories on what is happening here range from demonic possession to top secret scientific research from before the Great War even began and the bombs fell. But the actual culprit is one that we can read about in now countless terminal entries regarding the Dunwich Borers, Ugeltoth. Regarded as some sort of mythological or supernatural entity, the Eldritch being was supposedly a force that was being studied even before the Great War between the United States and China in Fallout, and is said to have powers of mind control, time manipulation, and matter deconstruction. The Dunwich Borer Company from its onset was actually a front to study this creature further, and the obelisk we find underneath the office building is actually a discovery by the company which allowed them to sacrifice members to turn into feral ghouls even before the Great War had broken out. So the question then becomes, who exactly is Ugeltoth? Were feral ghouls a result of this being rather than the war as we previously assumed? And what even is the purpose of these ancient artifacts and creatures that the Dunwich Borers were studying? Potentially, something even more harrowing and disastrous than nuclear fallout in winter lurks beneath the shadows in Fallout, and the Dunwich Building may be at the center of this mystery that seems to have been taking place now for millennia. Knowing Bethesda, it's the type of puzzle we may never get all the answers to, and as long as we don't, the Dunwich Building and its company's foundations will forever be shrouded in secrecy. One of the best parts about video games is they allow our imaginations to really go wild with things that could otherwise not exist. And in terms of places like this, almost no games have something more fantastical and otherworldly than the Polyhedron from Pathologic, a structure shrouded in so much mystery you could make a game on just the building itself. Situated on the far western side of town, the Polyhedron is a massive structure that reaches into the sky in the shape of a tornado or wasp's nest. Its features and creation itself defy all gravity and known laws of physics, with simply a small point at the bottom with miles of roots beneath it holding up a contraption that rivals New York skyscrapers. Inside the cylindrical structure are plain walls that cover entire rooms, with strange markings, symbolism, and doors to nowhere everywhere. Many in the town see the building as a demonic presence of pure evil, while others are convinced that the structure could house the secrets to immortality and the soul. But regardless, the real intentions of this place are still shrouded in so much intrigue and mystery. Originally commissioned by the illustrious Kane family and designed by Peter Stamatin, the Polyhedron was built 5 years before we even take the reins of the player character. The true intentions behind its creation are still completely unknown to the town residents, or even how it was built in the first place. But what we do know is that in the meantime, the location is being used as a housing unit of sorts for young children. Hundreds of innocent younglings live within the walls of this maze, but unlike the adults, the children are able to see through the walls into other dimensions entirely, giving them the power to live out their greatest dreams in a fantasy that never ends. Somehow, in the depths of the Polyhedron, a sort of magic has been concocted that allows the human mind to be expanded, and even some adults that stay in the interior long enough report seeing visions of their childhood and feeling like a kid again, without a care in the world. However, what seems like a potentially ultra-realistic place on the surface may be hiding even more sinister and dark secrets. There have been reports of pools of blood that appear beneath the Polyhedron late at night, along with screams of children that have gone missing. And when you consider just how creepy the actual man who built the Polyhedron, Andrew Stamatin, is, you start to wonder whether or not the true purpose of this building could be something beyond evil. After all, why has this mysterious structure attracted so many children in the first place? And how on earth does such a thing even exist in our plane of existence? It defies all logic and reason, has no concrete explanation, and seems to inspire pure love or disdain depending on the person who sees it. And when you add on top of this the rumors that the labyrinth is a conduit of sorts for souls, which may hold the keys to immortality, it becomes clear that crazier things are occurring that almost no one knows anything about. In fact, even the original creators of the building have remarked how the land it was built on is sacred and should not have been disturbed for any reason, implying that there may be an amalgamation of scientific and spiritual forces at work in the inner depths of the tower. But overall for me, the Polyhedron is just a puzzling and peculiar conundrum, and because there are so many kids at the heart of it, it could be one of the single most haunting mysteries in games, where potentially hundreds of children are being kidnapped, brainwashed, and tortured in order to extract their souls, all for some nefarious reason we never get to learn. It's a place that is as terrifying as it is intriguing due to how little we know about it, and it's a shame that the Pathologic series has never gotten the love it deserves, seeing as we may never get a third game that could potentially give us more answers to this grand mystery. Without a doubt, one of the most interesting places in video games I've ever seen. Subnautica is a series practically made for discovery, and as such is no stranger to terrifying and mysterious locations, home to giant monsters, horrifying sounds, or the fear of the unknown. It's part of what makes the game so amazing in the first place, and why those with thalassophobia should steer clear. But while there are countless creepy and unexplainable places like the Void, Crater's Edge, the Blood-Kelp Forest, or even the rumored unidentified zone hidden behind claustrophobia-inducing tunnels of pure darkness in the lava zone, there actually is one place even more mysterious than all of this, which, while not quite as scary, is home to some of the craziest and most mind-blowing conundrums in the entire series, the Lost River. And that's because the Lost River is home to a myriad of life, some much more old than others, and many of which may hold the keys to the ancient past of this underwater planet. With 3 distinct ways of getting into this zone, it's almost impossible you miss it at some point during your playthrough, and the entire zone itself is characterized by foreboding and distinct caverns shrouded in darkness, only illuminated by the thick green glow of a poisonous must blanketing the ground everywhere you look. And when compared to other places underwater in Subnautica, the Lost River is quite barren with almost no living life, and the few things that do reside in these depths seem to already be dying, dead, or reaching out for help. But still, in a weird way, almost forming a beauty of its own, with striking and surprising rich color illuminations that stand out when compared to the rest of the game. And as if it couldn't get any more strange, the zone is one of the coldest in the entire game, meaning survival conditions down here are grueling, making traversal all the more difficult. However, if you do manage to make your way deeper into the biome, you are met with sprawling caverns full of peculiar rock formations jutting from the ceilings like stalactites that almost give off the sense that they were purpose-built for something. But as to what that something would be, it's hard to say. We do know that towards the center of the zone, we can discover an abandoned disease research facility along with some accompanying analysis structures nearby. And inside these alien fortifications are the logs that detail how the facility was attacked by a massive sea leviathan, which broke the containment of the Kara bacterium that was being studied, resulting in the entire ecosystem of the planet being sent into ruin, the main plot of the first game. We can even find the sea leviathan skeleton nearby lurking in the dark, but even more interestingly are the other skeletons we find too. For example, nearby one of the research centers is a wholly unique bone plate leviathan body, which almost looks like a giant slug that would have slithered on the ground, but seemingly has been dead for quite some time. Obviously, the researchers in this area must have been quite interested in what this creature was and what purpose it served, as nowadays there's nothing like it at all. And it makes you start to wonder, what exactly is the Lost River anyways? We know that Kara was first released here and likely resulted in the diseased look of the zone, along with the lack of notable life outside of ghost leviathans hunting us in the dark. But what was this place before? Well, the further you make your way into the interior of this dying place, the more insane the discoveries become, and the more questions they beg of us to ask. At one point, you might stumble into the Tree Cove, a massive cavern with a hulking alien tree-like structure in the middle, surrounded by ghost rays swimming around it in an almost religious endeavor, like they are praying to some greater being. And even more horrifying, in the center of the zone's crossroads lies the biggest mystery in all of Subnautica, the gargantuan super leviathans. You see, scattered all across the poisonous and murky must at the bottom of the Lost River's innards are massive skeletal monstrosities that span entire rooms. Ancient skulls of creatures whose heads rival the size of the Cyclops, a massive submarine vehicle you can build in-game, and the biggest traversal machine you're able to build in the series so far. On its own, these skeletons are terrifying and imply the existence, or at least the past existence, of creatures that would dwarf even the largest Leviathan-class organisms we meet in-game. And considering how dangerous and anxiety-inducing these monsters already are, it really makes your imagination go wild with possibilities. For instance, while the Lost River is a relatively large zone with some big caverns, they most certainly aren't big enough to house creatures of this magnitude such as the gargantuan super Leviathan skeletons would imply, especially considering that by some accounts, most of the bodies are still hidden under the poisonous sands which we can't even get to. So how on earth would such hulking beasts get into a cramped cavern like this? Well, considering the Lost River's proximity to the inactive lava zone just below, maybe at some point in the past, the Lost River was actually much more expansive, akin to the void area with thousands of miles of open ocean that seem to carry on into the depths of hell. Potentially at some point in the past, the lava zone became active, causing mass extinction events of the bigger predators and completely disfiguring and forming the landscape around the volcanic activity, resulting in the formation of the Lost River around dying super megafauna that were picked apart by smaller creatures later all the way to the bone. It's a fascinating idea in general and really shows the best parts of Subnautica, those places that give us more questions than answers with just enough environmental storytelling mixed in with some lore and data entries that imply truly fantastical ideas of what this planet must have been like in the past, and also things that could be in store for us in future iterations of the series. And more than anything, I think it's a perfect example of why mysterious places and games are so important, because even long after we have finished some of our favorite titles, the things we talk about and think about endlessly are those places or locations we saw that are so unexplainable that we can't help but speculate. It's one of my favorite parts about the games I love, and we have a ton more to discuss that are just as, if not even more insane. While the greatest start to a game of all time is without a doubt Prey from Arcane Studios, followed closely by the original Prey title from 2006, another worthy contender has to be Half-Life 1. At the very start of the game, you open your eyes to find yourself on a high-speed tram taking you across a massive expanse of desert and concrete buildings. And as you look from side to side surrounded by pristine windows, you slowly make your way deeper into a top-secret base known as the Black Mesa Research Facility. You play as Gordon Freeman, a theoretical physicist and doctor who has been assigned to this remote government installation in the New Mexico high desert, and as your train comes to a halt at your station, it becomes clear that this base is hiding a lot more than meets the eye. You see, presumably at some point in the 50s, the United States government created Black Mesa atop the ashes of abandoned ICBM missile silos in an attempt to gain a foothold on the cutting edge of tech in order to give themselves an advantage over adversaries. Similar to Area 51 in our real lives, Black Mesa was meant to be shrouded in utter secrecy, meaning no one employee knew everything about what was going on, instead working on very specific tasks that would then be taken to other groups like an assembly line for discoveries that only a handful knew about. And due to the nature of these discoveries and research being made, efforts required a huge amount of people, each with a minuscule amount of knowledge as to what was going on. This meant that Black Mesa itself was home to countless scientists across many disciplines, and as research efforts grew, more and more housing units for employees' families even began to spring up, since those that worked at Black Mesa were not allowed to leave on account of the sensitivity of the things they were working on. Sadly though, as it always seems to happen with covert government operations, things eventually turned for the worst. During an event known as the Black Mesa Incident or Lambda Incident, a recently highly classified pure alien Zen crystal that was unearthed underground was inserted into the anti-mass spectrometer. This device was situated in Sector C's lab C33A, which was designed to analyze exotic and unknown materials led by Dr. Rosenberg. However, when this new Zen crystal was placed into the device, it triggered a rare quantum event known as a resonance cascade, which ruptured the space-time continuum and allowed extra-dimensional beings from a new realm to pour through. This eventually led to the United States government nuking the entire facility and killing all of those inside after special military forces were instructed to retreat, trying to keep the results of the experiment a secret from the public. Even more horrifying though, the resonance cascade itself attracted the attention of nearby alien forces in the galaxy known as the Combine, which then invaded Earth and enslaved its people. It's just yet another reminder of why humanity must always be careful with the power of things it doesn't understand, and also is a great setup for a video game in general. A big part of the reason why the Half-Life series has such an adoring fanbase. But despite how catastrophic this one test in Black Mesa was, it still only was one test. Because as we see at the start of the game, Black Mesa has a lot more going on than just the anti-mass spectrometer. Everywhere you go in the facility before all hell breaks loose are armed guards, retinal scanners, barred off doors, secret chambers, shady characters, and so much security that you can barely blink without suspicion being drawn. Clearly, there are all manner of different experiments and strange research going on in this concrete jungle in the desert. And when you take into account extremely weird figures like the G-Man, who are referenced as being in the Black Mesa facility before the resonance cascade, it's clear something very sinister is going on behind the walls of Black Mesa. So the question becomes then, what exactly is going on at this secret research facility? We know that alien communication and technological development would have been a big focus based on what we've seen, but presumably this would have carried over to other aspects of study as well, outside of physics, including genetics, physiology, neurology, and much more. Presumably, there should be countless research papers and discoveries inside Black Mesa that, if we were able to get to, would reveal so much about the human condition, space and time, and the meaning of life itself. And really, for me, just the idea of exploring this now fabled place we get to run around in-game sounds so exciting. Getting to uncover more secrets about how the facility started, about what it's discovered, and what the real goals of the top brass in the United States government with Black Mesa are. If the rumors of Half-Life 3 being real have any truth to them, we might just get to find out here shortly. For any of you who have been watching my channel for a while, you know that Cyberpunk 2077 is my favorite game of all time. And while that mostly comes down to masterful writing and moments that really make you feel something, one of my least discussed parts of Cyberpunk that I love as well is the world building and lore. And in any universe where cybernetics and human augmentation have become so commonplace, there are bound to be a whole myriad of mysteries and secrets to uncover. But maybe the most fascinating of all of these is a place in the story that is completely shrouded in secrecy, that might just hold the keys to the most important revelations of all, the net. You see, in Cyberpunk, the net is somewhat analogous to the internet in our real lives, a vast telecommunications network that is even more extensive, reaching things such as cybernetic limbs and almost every application on Earth. The net itself is made up of an amalgamation of hard lines, radio links, cell networks, microwave transmitters, and any chip that can output a signal. Upon its original creation, the net was meant to be a decentralized and open breeding ground of ideas and cultures, where anyone could connect and instantly talk to others across the planet or share ideas. And in Cyberpunk, this sharing came not only in the form of computer monitors or interfaces, but also even cyber modems called cyberdecks that allow users to plug electrodes into their brain to interface to the net in a fully 3D environment, allowing traversal and sneaking around. With all of this power, many different large corporations and governments constructed data fortresses or custom code that allowed them to infiltrate other rivals' databanks, meaning this Wild West of the net's history was full of espionage and intrigue. But as these corrupt megacorporations continued their tirade into taking over the net, some prominent activists began to become more enraged. The entire point of this technology was the freedom it allowed, but with many military-grade artificial intelligences being constructed by every single notable faction, government, or company, things were starting to get out of hand, with too much power being focused in the hands of a few. In retaliation, one of the most talented hackers in cyberpunk history, known as Raish Bartmoss, unleashed an especially potent virus known as the Roving Autonomous Bartmoss Interface Drones, or Rabbits for short, which quickly spread across the entire open communication channel of the net, transforming any AI encountered into rogue killing machines. This event, known as the data crash, would forever transform the world of Cyberpunk and change the net into something almost unrecognizable. In no time, everything cascaded into utter chaos, with these rogue AIs turning against their masters and taking entire corporations down with them. Due to the sheer scale and power, even Netwatch, a worldwide policing organization for the net, was unable to stop them. And as a final contingency plan, they decided to create one final AI of their own, known as the Blackwall, which was tasked with containing all rogue AI to remote inaccessible portions of the net. In time, the Blackwall proved to be extremely effective, and mutated the net itself into a much more closed-off ecosystem, with a massive red data layer that was used to trap these now sentient AI in their own corner of cyberspace. Corporations and governments began to spin up their own private networks everywhere, and what previously was a technology meant to unite us all now was nothing but a barren wasteland, with hackers and netrunners connecting to the open net periodically to get information or exchange secrets, while most traffic now took place in custom private networks. In Cyberpunk 2077, we even get to interact with both portions of this new and old net multiple times, with many rumors spreading that either aliens, artificial intelligence, or even human lizard hybrids are behind the deepest parts of this digitized world, concocting plans to take over the world or change society as we know it altogether. And really, the net itself just lends itself to so many interesting and horrifying ideas like this, in many ways being an entire civilization of newborn consciousness that are trapped in a world of nothing but ones and zeros. And it raises so many questions, including what were Bartmoss's end goals before his death? What are the rogue AI behind the Blackwall hiding? And could there be secrets about the world's past and future hidden in the forgotten data layers? Or even, what are the mega corporations up to in their new highly secure private networks? It's a lot of questions that we may eventually get answers to in the Cyberpunk 2077 sequel coming years from now, and I can't wait to hear more. Because for me, the net and everything that surrounds it in the universe of Cyberpunk is so full of fascinating mysteries and secrets that you can't help but want to know more about. A place that by some definitions might not even truly exist per se, but the closer we look into it, might have a more dramatic effect on the real world than the real world itself, especially in a world where human augmentation and cybernetic connection to outside influences is more powerful than ever. Imagine the type of catastrophe that could be wrought should some of those rogue AIs gain control of systems that govern everyday humanity in this universe. A scary thought to think about, but also the exact kind of thought that makes mysterious places and games so special.